As we all know, writing is an essential means of communication. It is a very important skill for second language learners. Therefore, our following 2 sessions will be focusing on how to help our students improve their writing skills in a meaningful way. Our first presenter of the day is Dr. Zainab Gaffas, who is currently an assistant professor of applied linguistics and ELT in the English Language Center at Al University, Saudi Arabia. Prior to her recent appointment at the ELC, she was a teaching assistant at the College of Health Science for Females, Saudi Arabia. She received her undergraduate degree from Al University and her MA in English for Specific Purposes from University of Essex, and her PhD in English Language Teaching from University of Sheffield. She has published papers in journals. She has also presented various research-based papers at several national and international conferences. And so, I will now leave the platform to you, Dr. Zainab Gaffas.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh jami'an. Thank you, Ms. Zahra, for this lovely introduction. And hi, everyone, in the last day of the English Language Center Forum. Honestly, I've always loved meeting new people, and though this is happening virtually, I'm still so thrilled to see you all on screen. Thank you and welcome again, and I really hope that you'll find this workshop valuable. The topic of this workshop is about teaching writing, and if you let me tell you why I choose this topic or to talk about this topic, for several reasons. The first reason, I believe that we all agree on the fact that one of the headaches that the teachers of English in EFL classroom face is how to teach writing. It is one of the skills that requires students not only to be equipped with the necessary skills, but also to be motivated to write. So for most of the students, writing is a painful process, and we agree on that. Another reason for choosing this topic is that most of our students in the university were not writing with the frequency we might expect. Nor were they doing the types of writing that we will require them to do in the universities. So supporting students in learning how to write and how to communicate their ideas effectively and successfully should start at early stages of English language learning. And that learning should continue as the students proceed in their English language learning. So teachers in schools and also teachers in universities should work together and hand in hand to achieve this target. So I'm here today to offer English language teachers a range of practical research-based approaches for developing their students' writing skills. And I am more than happy to share with you some practices that I used in my own writing classroom, and those practices were supported by related literature and include examples from the textbook, school's textbook. As an English language teacher, including myself, we absolutely want to ensure that we are working smarter rather than harder to promote our students' writing success and growth by using evidence-based practices. So let's begin. The outline, this is the outline of this workshop. I will talk briefly about why teaching writing is important, and then I'll talk so briefly about theories of teaching writing, and then I'll give about 3/4 of this workshop will be based on explaining the approaches to teaching writing, including this workshop 3 approaches: product-based approach, number 2, process-based approach, 3, genre-based approach. I will be looking into each approach and what each approach means, what each approach involves, and in the stages in order to be implemented into your writing class. And also, I'm going to use some examples from my own writing class and from the book that most teachers in schools uses. That is Mega Goal number 4. Yesterday, I noticed that most students of you were fascinated with genre approach. That Mr. Abdulrahman talked about it. And for the sake of holding this fascination a little bit higher, I will show you how we can implement genre-based approach using some examples in this book. And then we will be closed the session with some final tips. So let's go to the next slide. So if we think that writing as a skill, it offers students a lot of opportunities and a lot of vital facilities that can help them succeed not only in their academic studies, but also in their own career and also in their other relevant aspects of their lives. However, sadly, however, students do not seem to understand the importance writing has in their own lives, or they just do not want to understand it because they perceive that writing in English is far above their competence level. So if students are to be successful in school, at work, and in their personal lives, they must learn to write. This requires that they receive adequate practice and instruction in writing. As you absolutely agree with me, this skill is complex and it does not develop naturally. So what are the reasons for teaching writing? What are the reasons behind the importance of teaching writing? First, writing is more than graphic samples production. It's more than just produce some graphics, because those samples have to be arranged according to certain rules and convention and norms in order to form words. And these words have to be arranged to form sentences and so on. The second reason, writing is neither an easy nor a spontaneous activity. So as a rule, we do not write one sentence or even a number of unrelated sentences. We produce a sequence of sentences arranged in a particular order, and they linked together in a certain way. And because the way these sentences have to be put in order and linked together in a kind of a way, in a kind of a rule, they form a coherent whole, what we call it text. So they form that text. To form that text, that requires lots of thinking. So writing requires some conscious mental effort. We think out our sentence and consider various ways of combining and arranging them, and then we read and make some notes and draft, revise, and making several versions until we are satisfied with the final product. The last reason, writing for a reader, and this is very important. So sometimes we write for ourselves, for example, like a shopping list. But when you are writing for a reader in a mind, this involves another way. This involves encoding of a message of some kind. So we want to translate our thoughts, we want to translate our ideas into language for the reader to understand successfully. So these are the reasons that we have to take care or we have to give it to teaching writing. Now, let's go to the next slide. Researchers have developed many theories in order to assist learners as well as teachers, in order what? To cope with the process of writing. So theories of teaching writing are very crucial for the teachers. And they are crucial for the teachers because they're going to use those theory in a way or another in their writing classes. They will implement them in terms of approaches or in terms of methodologies. So what are these theories? According to Hodges, he talked about four main theories. One of the first theories used to explain writing is the cognitive process theory of writing. This theory is developed by Flower and Hayes. In this theory, writing is perceived as a complex system of interworking cognitive process. I mean, it is based on the idea that writing is a kind of a thinking process. And in order to write, according to this theory, in order for students to write, he needs or she needs to use the mental process such as brainstorming, planning, organizing, and it needs creativity. So in the cognitive process view of writing, students do not follow a linear process of writing, but they cycle through major steps of writing, as I told you, like brainstorming, editing, revising, and so on. Let's jump to the second theory, which is the sociocultural theory of writing. This theory is developed by Fokoski, who indicates that learners could learn about the world around them from those who have, or from those who are more knowledgeable, or from those who have a great mastery of language. Unlike cognitive process theory, sociocultural theory emphasize motivation, emphasize affect, feelings, emotions, and also emphasize social influences as what? As main components of the writing process. So how we can relate this theory to writing? Under the scope of this theory, writing is perceived as collaborative social activity in which poor writers, those students who are unable to write or are incapable to write, can learn more from those who are experienced in writing. By what? By collaboration, by interaction, and so on. Therefore, in your writing classroom, students need to collaborate with each other and teachers, and they also need scaffolding from their own teachers and even from their classmates. The third, let's go to the third theory. It's the socio-cognitive theory and self-efficacy in writing. This one is developed by Bandura. In this theory, the idea behind this theory that researchers have realized that students' beliefs about their own writing competence are more important, and they are very important to their writing success. So what I want to say here, if a student believes that he or she can form that wanted target, they will have the motivation, they will have the willingness, they will have the encouragement to develop that or to accomplish that target. So under the scope of this theory, students always develop their perceptions by looking at their past production. So when they want to choose a task in order to do it, they have those students who have high efficacy, they will do it. But those students who have lower efficacy, they avoid that task because they are incapable of doing it. How we can increase the students' self-efficacy? We can increase it by, of course, helping them in writing, providing them with effective writing instructions. Now let's go to the last theory, which is ecological theory, and this theory was proposed by Cooper. This theory puts much emphasis on the interaction that people undertake with people very close to them, and put much emphasis on the environment surrounding them. In other words, students are influenced by the social relations they encounter every day. This relation starts from the home, I mean by the interaction by their family, members of their family, and this relationship then extend to other relationships in school with their teachers and their friends and with the systems and on and on and on. So all in all, this theory relates to writing by acknowledging an important or a key element that social and culture and environment and daily interactions have an impact on students' writing and the writing process, and it could become a part of their writing process. So we covered the theories of teaching writing. Now let's go to the approaches to teaching writing. These approaches that we have looked at the previous slide were translated, were developed, were used in order to create various approaches. And those approaches are going to be used in classrooms. So theories are translated into appropriate methodologies, and those appropriate methodologies are going to be used in writing classroom. Remember that each approach seen as an additional perspective. And why do I mean by an additional perspective? Each approach could be seen as a useful tool in what? In supporting us as a teacher to find out what type, what kind of approach that my students need. And based on that conclusion, after I used that approach and get some conclusion or results, I can find if that approach helpful, I will use it. If it's not, I can find another approach, which means that different approaches are more seen as complementary. They complete each other and they are overlapping. So what I want to say here, that there is no right or wrong approach. However, teachers are the only ones who can decide which approach the students need. And if they select one, as I said, and they find it not useful, they can use another one. So each approach can complete the other one. Now, in this workshop, I'm going to talk about product-based approach, process-based approach, and genre-based approach. And I'll explore with you very quickly the product and process, because I'm absolutely sure that most of you are familiar with that. So in the product-based approach, it's a kind of a traditional approach in which students are encouraged. So they are just mimic or imitate a model text. So they are not required to generate ideas. They are not required to brainstorm ideas. They spend more time learning how to imitate the model text they're supposed to write. This product approach involves some stages, and these are the stages. Stage number 1 is the model text. Stage number 2 is the controlled practice, and stage 3 is the organizing ideas, and 4 is the final product. Why are these stages are important? They are important because you cannot skip one and jump to another one. So if you want your students to write or to produce their own final product, you cannot escape giving them the model or introducing them the model text. You cannot ask them to do some exercises and activity without giving or introducing them the model text. So you should follow the same strategies. If we look deeply, I'll go through this very quickly. This is an example of how we can use product-based approach in writing a recipe. So the first one, this is the writing recipe. This is the model text. So the first stage is analyzing the model. In this stage, you're gonna to ask your students or draw their attention to the structure, to the language, to the vocabulary in the recipe. So ask your students to identify measures, like for example, 1 pound, 1 tablespoon, and so on. Ask them to identify the ingredients used in the model. For example, shrimp, cumin, and paprika. And also ask them to identify the cooking verbs, like, for example, season, cook, remove, and so on. After that, we have the control practice. And this in this stage, yes, you introduce a variety of activities, and one sample of this activity is to ask students to complete to complete sentences by using one of those words. This is one time. Then we're going to look at then a third stage, which is organizing ideas. And here students can think about the text they are going to write, and they can work in group. And here teachers provide support and feedback. The last stage is the final product. And also here you are asking the students to produce their own text, but it's essential that the teachers provide learners with feedback on their production. So we finished with the product-based approach. We're gonna to look at what type of conclusions that we come up with if we are using product-based approach. Absolutely, it helps learners develop analytical skills. It is less time consuming if you compare it with other approaches to writing that we're going to look at it later. It's less time consuming because our focus on the end product, whereas other writing instructions requires learners to focus on the way or the path they should take in order to produce their text. However, it is like spoon feeding. So in this approach, students are not taught how to use language creatively, and the only use of language is the manipulation of fixed patterns, and the learning is done by imitation. So it's like spoon feeding. So reflecting on my own experience as a teacher, I can recommend this approach for younger learners or beginners whose their English language proficiency very poor, and they know not many grammatical structure, not many vocabulary in order to produce a piece of a writing. So we've done with the product. We have now to go to the process-based approach. A process-based approach, as the title or the term capture, is the fact that students, writers engage into writing tasks through a cyclic approach rather than single shot approach. They are not expected to produce and submit complete and polished writing without going through stages of planning, of drafting, of revising and editing and publishing. So unlike the previous approach, the process approach places much emphasis on meaning rather than on accuracy, rather than on the form. And this approach encourages individuals to take more responsibility for their writing. I mean, they begin writing with a plan in their heads. They think about what they want to say and who they are writing for. They make a draft of their own, but they do not imitate or copy others' drafts. Okay, now let's have a quick look on the stages of a process-based approach. We start with the pre-writing. In pre-writing, we have other strategies, like, for example, we collect the ideas, we generate the ideas, and some of the strategies that we can use is the brainstorming, free writing, and looping, and so on. One of strategies in pre-writing is the free writing. Free writing, I love this strategy in the early stages of writing. If you can look here in the free writing, I give you some time to read some examples done by my students. So look at the first one. So different topic. I asked the students, my students were required to talk about skin diseases. And in skin diseases, before they are required to submit their own draft, I ask them to do free writing. So if you look at the first one, different topics can be on the skin disease. I can write about eczema. It's a condition that makes your skin red and itchy. It is common in children. Look at the next one. This text is supposed to be about skin disease. I don't like, but even though I read the unit and read about different types of the skin, so and so, I cannot think of what to write, and I have felt this way. Look at the last one, but I'm not sure if it matters. I am bubbling and I don't know what else to say about this topic. Why skin? We can write about cancer. I have 4 minutes left. I have acne, and everyone can see that I have visit, and she doesn't complete it. She did not complete it. So if you look at free writing, it's a kind of messy, unplanned, unpredictable. What this teacher can ask the students to do that. She can ask them to write quickly, do not edit, and do not stop for a set time limit, for example, 10 minutes. Why this strategy is useful, and I've seen that in my students, because it helps the students to start thinking and to start coming up with the ideas. If you look at that one, I have acne, and the other one said, I don't want to talk about skin disease. I want to write about cancer. So although this strategy is time consuming, but when teachers review and respond to students' free writing by reviewing them individually or within smaller groups, these responses can stimulate students' thinking and can help them get into the habit of writing, and can help them feel that writing is not painful as they thought about it. One recommendation in free writing strategies, teacher can give class time, or you can just default class time for a brief session, telling them how they are gonna to use free writing as a rewriting stage. And usually teachers do not evaluate or even collect them. But for me, as I told you, I collect the free writing in classroom and discuss the ideas, but never put an eye on a grammar or language, and only encourage their thinking and encourage their ideas. Now, if we go to the next stage is the planning. The planning, students here began to organize and order ideas using mind map, clustering, and coming up with more ideas. Some students find it very useful to see visual representation of ideas like this. We have here a cluster diagram. These are some of the examples. And we have here Venn diagram. And Venn diagram can be used as a tool when students are required to write a compare and contrast essay. So if you can see here, we have 2 circles. If you look at the parts that are overlapping, here we can put the similarities. And if you look at the parts that do not overlap, here we can put the differences, and they can use the ideas in both circles. Another strategy in planning is the cognitive strategy that we call it the KWL. In this strategy, if you look at this, the K stands for what I already know about this topic. W stands for what I want to know about this topic. And L stands for what I learned about this topic. So students can summarize their prior knowledge in this column. So what they have, what knowledge they have about this topic. And they can develop their question, their interest, what I want to know about this topic. They can put it here. And in the last column, students can extract new information they obtain or they gather while they are looking for or searching the topic. And here are some of individual KWL strategy, and the other one is can be done in a group or in a classroom. Now, I have some examples of planning strategies, and I have collected from the book that is used in secondary school. Can you guess what is the type of strategy that we use it here? No, it's not. No, it's not KWL. Yes, mind mapping, correct. This is mind mapping. Now, look at the other examples. Here, students have to choose a type of animal. They are required to write a topic, and they are required to choose a type of animal to search and to write about it. Now, what can you think? What is the strategy is used here? Can you let me? Yes, exactly. Let's jump to the next picture. The students are required to write a topic, and they been asking to compare what your life is like now and so on. So what type of strategy is used here? Excellent. Venn diagram, that's lovely. Now, next stage is the drafting. This is a key stage in the process-based approach. So give students time to create several drafts and draw their attention to the importance of producing several drafts. Also draw their attention that they are going to use the outlines and the ideas that they used in the previous stages, and they are required to put those ideas into sentences and paragraph. They should learn that this is a process. It's not a separate stages. So you're gonna to ask students to brainstorm, and then they're gonna to plan on another topic, and then you're gonna to ask them to write a piece of writing in another topic. No, it should be a process under one topic, and students should learn these process step by step. In this stage, you can also draw their attention that they are not allowed to copy entries from the internet or from the online resources because they are easily found. You also have to draw your students that it's not allowed for you, and it's not allowed to steal others people's words or ideas. You have to generate your ideas, and you have to write them as simply as possible. You can also draw their attention to not use fancy expressions or difficult concepts. They do not have adequate background about it. So I'll give you here some examples that my students submitted: first draft, second draft, and third draft. I think it's not the third draft. But let's look at the first draft. I remember I wrote that here. If you look at the first draft, it's a little bit shorter. There are still some spelling mistakes, and there are some grammatical mistakes here. If you jump to the next one, the second draft, if you can see there is some differences between the first and the second. The draft is a little bit longer. There are some ideas which are developed, and there are some examples given. And if you look at the last draft here, it's more organized. Still, there are some mistakes. Still, there are language mistakes and punctuational mistakes, but it's a bit longer. Students developing her ideas, giving more examples, trying to connect the first paragraph with the second paragraph and try to conclude that at the end. So I think that we all agree that producing several drafts is very important for students to do in writing classroom. Now, if we go to the next stage in process is the reflection. What I mean by reflection is to let a piece of writing sit before coming back to it with a fresh pair of eyes. Why reflection is important, or why they put reflection? Reflection can allow students to see the gap in their text structure and can make appropriate correction, because they leave it for a time and then come back to read it. So in this way, they start to learn how to critique their writing, how to question their ideas. So try to give your students the time to do that. How I can give them that? You can tell them that you will give them time for reflection. You can go at home, leave that review writing for 2 days or 3 days, and we will meet in the classroom where we can discuss in a small group or individually your reflection, or listen to what kind of gaps you identify on your writing, what kind of correction you have made up. So reflection is a very important stage. Then we're going to look at peer and tutor review, which means the feedback. After the reflection, students may seek for their friends or their teacher evaluation on their writing. Feedback is a key element while a text is under development. So it should be present throughout the process of writing. Remember that feedback on a student draft can take the form of oral or written comments, either by the students or by their friends or by the teacher. And also remember that when students reach their teacher's feedback, they may feel that their teachers is most important, is most correct, because they feel that they are expert in knowledge. So what I mean to say here, do not let the students depend on your feedback only. Let them ask and seek for their friends' feedback, because depending or relying on teachers' feedback can bring some certain advantages. One of those advantages the students feel, some of these advantages that the students do not want to put their own ideas or their own suggestions, because teachers' feedback is contradict to their own suggestions. So they do not want to add their own suggestions. They do not want to add their own ideas, even if they do not disagree with the teacher feedback or they do not understand her feedback. Also remember that peer review, or working together with with the students' friends or whether classmates, can happen within pair or in a small group. This group working can go through all the stages of the process writing. So they can start working together from the early stages, from the pre-writing, organizing, planning, and so on. In order for feedback to be done well, I mean by feedback here the peer feedback, ask students to focus on one aspect of the text at a time. So ask 2 students to look at her friend's writing text and ask them to look at one aspect. For example, ask her to look at content. In the other time, ask students to look at the organization. Not all together, no, you can divide that into or separate the feedback into smaller pieces, not one time for giving feedback on content, one time is giving to give a feedback on organization, and so on. Now, after the peer review, peer and tutor review, we can go to the revision, where the students are now developing and clarifying their ideas and developing the structure. If they are not satisfied with that, they can go again to the drafting, to the planning, drafting, reflection, and so on. Or they might think that they need more ideas to be generated. So they're going to go to planning, drafting, reflection, and so on. If they are satisfied with their writing, they can go to the editing and proofreading. And what do I mean by editing and proofreading? The focus would be directed on grammar, language, grammar, punctuation, and so on. So we've done with this process-based stage, and there are some conclusions that we can come up with this if we are trying to use this approach in our writing classroom. It fosters the creativity, it encourages collaborative work, and also requires support and takes time. So according to to the previous product, it takes a lot of time. So we've done with the process-based approach. Now let's go to the last one, genre-based approach. What do I mean by genre-based approach? A genre is a term for grouping text together. And why we group those texts together? In order to analyze them and in order to understand the language, the structure that have been used by the writers. In order to use those language and to learn them and start writing similar genres like the one that produced by their own community or by their own writers. If you look here, genre-based approach consider text as a discourse. What I mean by a discourse, as I say that we use those language that we have, we use those features that we have. Why? Because if we learn them, we use them in our writing, and if we use them in our writing, they will be helpful for the readers to understand them and to achieve the purpose that we want to achieve. I'll give you an example here. So when you think of texting a message to a friend and writing an essay, these two genres are very different writing genres, and they are different writing situations. A text message, you communicate the ideas informally, and the background information between the sender and the receiver are familiar, or because it's common, because the sender and familiar share common knowledge and experience. But unlike essay, here you have to use different characteristics. You have to use formal tone. You have to use structure. You have to use particular language in order to explain your ideas and to provide examples and to use sentences and to complete them and to form a text that can be successfully understood by the readers. Genre-based approach has developed by many schools. One of those schools are English for specific purposes and North American New Rhetoric Studies and the Australian Systematic Functional Linguistic. I am interested in Australian Systematic Functional Linguistic, which regards genre as a social activity, and its aim is to seek understanding of the organization and the structure of a language in order to understand its social purpose. So let's try to use genre approach in your writing classroom. So in genre approach, learners should know that each genre has a social function or has a social purpose. Look at these two genres. They are very different. The first one, if you can see, what's the first one? Can you let me know, please? The first one is, yes, it's a coffee, but what is that genre? What is that text? What we can call it? Can we call it essay? Can we call it recipe? No, it is a health brochure. What is the social function? What is the social purpose of using this? The social function, it gives us more instruction about what to do. So look at the second picture. What is this picture? Excellent, yes, advertisement. What is the social function? What is the message that if you want to use advertisement, what is the message that you want to send to the readers? What that message? It describes a product, it gives more information about a product. So you cannot use the language or the structure or the organization or the text structure of the advertisement to put it into health brochure. They have their own text structure, their own linguistic features, and their own language. Secondly, we have here some of the schools genres that have been used in Sydney schools. That look here. We have recount. What is the social function when students are required to write recount? It tells what happened. Jump to narrative. What is the social purpose? Story. What is the social function or the social purpose of using description? It's to detail the characteristic features of a particular thing. What is the social function or purpose behind writing a report? It's to present information about something. It describes an entire class of things, whether natural or made. So these are a variety of genres included with their own social purpose or social message. Now, let's go here. These are some examples I collected from the same book. If you look here, the students are required to write a description of memorable meal you once had. So what type of structure is essay is this? It's descriptive essay. Can you tell me what's the social purpose of using descriptive essay? What is that social purpose or that social message? Can you please? Descriptive. It details the characteristic features of a particular thing, so it gives more information, describe things in deeply. Jump to the next one. Choose a type of animal the students are required to write about. Choose a type of animal to research it and to write about it. So what text type is this? It's reporting. What is the please? Facts. Information, yeah. Lovely. Know about herself, yeah. So it presents information about something. Now, jump to the last picture. On an important decision you or your family member has made. What's the text type? Is the narrative essay. And what's the social purpose behind writing narrative? Please tell me. Entertainment, yeah, right. Oh, sorry. It tells a story. Yes, or not family event. Yes, that's correct. So it tells more, give us information, stories, comments. Yes. So let's look to the second important thing. Remember that in genre approach, each text has its own generic structure. What I mean by that, if you look at this example, this is a formal letter, which we can use it in order to send a complaint. If you look at the structure here, look here, structure, text structure, you have a situation. Under the situation, you have generic structure, which involves or which includes sender address, receiver address, and salutation. So this is the text structure when you are going write a formal in order to explain complaint. Then, what the next section to what? To identify the complaint. I'm writing about the stove in my flat. 2 elements are not working, and it's very difficult. And also you have to include justification of complaint. I have twice repeated this problem to you now, and nothing has been done. So we start with the situation, which includes sender address, receiver address, and salutation, and then we'll jump to problem, which includes identification of complaint, justification of complaint. And then we're going to put evaluation. What do we mean by evaluation? What the action or the demand that we are wanting to be performed. This problem is urgent. I would appreciate if you could arrange have to store the stove fixed immediately. Which includes sign off and then send the name. So this is this text structure if you are going to write a formal written. Now, in journal approach, each journal has its own linguistic feature. And what I mean by linguistic features is the grammar. So if you look here, we have a procedure. What is the purpose behind procedure? Is to tell how to do something. What's the structure? We start with the goal, materials required, and step needed. What are the language or the grammar that we're going to include in procedure, imperative, action, and so on? Jump to the report. If you are going to report, what's the social purpose? Is to inform reader about something. What is the structure? You start with identifying statement and then followed by description. What is the grammar of the language? General nouns, relating verbs, action verbs, timeless, present tenses, and so on. So look here. We're gonna to use this generic social purposes and generic structure and language in order to write a report essay that the students required to do, and to choose a type of animal and to write about it. And the students choose to write about that. So back again, report. What is the text type is report? What's the social purposes? Is informing reader about something. What's the generic or the text structure? Identifying statement and then followed by description. And these are the linguistic features. Here is the report. So I'll give you 1 minute to look at it. So bats are eukaryotic animals. They live in dark and sleep in the day. There are different types of bats. There are long-nosed bats, mouse-eared bats, and lattice-winged bats. So we're going to use this text according to the identification of features in reports. So what is the social purpose? Or what's the text type first? It's report. And what's the social function? Tells us about something or what something is like. And then we're gonna to look at the structure of writing report. What is the first thing that we start with? Identification statement, which means that this sentence, bats are eukaryotic animals. And then what is that description followed by? They live in dark and sleep in day. What is the language? What's the grammar? The grammar is what? It's present tense. Now we cannot get to look to this example, which is a bit longer, the same example. So we start with identification statement, and then we describe this statement in more details. And another identification statement, there are different types of bats. You are going to follow that by more description, describing what are the types. There are long, there are mouse-eared bats, and lattice-winged bats. In the second paragraph, you start with another identification statement. What is that? Bats vary in color. And then followed with the description. What is the description here? The area surrounding limb prunes is lighter in color. in some paths. So you are describing why they are, what there are different colors, why there are varying colors. So this is the way that we use genre in writing. Now, how you can implement genre in your own writing classroom? We're going to use the teaching learning cycle. We start with building the context, modeling the context, joint construction, independent construction, and finally linking related text. So again, from the same book, students here are required to write a descriptive essay about the house. What is the social function of the descriptive essay? Is to tell something, what something is like, what a place is like, what a person is like. So the first thing is building the context. So in this stage, teacher begins preparing the students to write about, to write by what? By revealing the genre purpose. And also by by showing them in which setting this text is used. So what is the social purpose? Is to give more information and to describe more about a place or thing. And here we have to describe a house. Teacher can use a variety of activities. For example, teacher can divide the students into groups, and each student can use one of the rooms here, so can use one of the rooms and write about it, and then they can talk about it, and they have to offer information and exchange information with each other, so they gain more deeper understanding about what they're going to write. Through group work, students will develop deeper understanding of the structure and the ideas and what the sentences that they're going to write about. After that, which is very important, is the modeling text. Means analyzing the text. I'm going to use the same model that is included in your in the secondary school textbook. So we're going to use this model and start to analyze it. So here we're going to introduce us to the generic structure and linguistic features. What are the main tenses? What are the main vocabulary, and so on? What is the first sentence? What is that sentence followed by? So you can give questions, throw questions to students, and students start to thinking and doing analyzing and analyze the text. So I'm not going to use anything. I'm not going to use something that I came up with. I have to go to literature and consult the literature before I give the students the way or the structure to follow when they are going to write descriptive essay. So I'm here. I'm going to a Rose Martin description. They identify that descriptive essay, which describes specific things, has two steps or has two stages or has two text structure. The first one is orientation and the second one is description. So we're going to use orientation and description while we are writing descriptive essay. So here I'm going to show students that the first sentence is orientation. What is this sentence? The home that means the most to me is my grandparents' house. And then tell the students that they have to put more description after orientation. So a lot of description, like for example, each time I go there, I feel a sense of comfort and warmth, and so on. So if you look at the second paragraph, there is another sentence which is orientation, which should be followed by a description. So what type in modeling stage or in text analyzing is you can ask students to complete the description, for example, like this. So you have the orientation. Can you guess and write? Can you start writing the description? So they know that they have first to give orientation sentence followed by description. So they can write, for example, you notice a long narrow kitchen that leads into the main living and dining room of her house, and so on and so on. Or you can also show the students two descriptive text or descriptive essay that are well written, or I mean good examples, and ask the students to think of the following questions. Ask them, what are the similarities and what are the differences do you notice between these two texts? consider the following: vocabulary used, grammar, structure of the paragraph, whether the question is answered or not. So here you're gonna, to help the student and allow them start to analyze, start to look at the text with an analyzing eye. Other activities that you can include in the modeling text is you can use rearrange the text. You can ask students to give them an exercise that you have a lot of paragraphs that they are not arranged, and you ask them to rearrange the text or reorganize a scrambled paragraph, or complete the one gap sentences as we do with the first one. Then we're going to look at the joint construction of text. Joint construction, as the term suggests, we can consider it like what? We can consider it like a bridge that helps lower level learners construct their own writing first with others people assistance. So during this stage, the teachers can ask those experienced writers to help those who are poor writer while they are construct their text. And here in this stage, the teacher's role is facilitator, which means that she offers help in language, in structure, and even in organization. Joint construction can be done in pair or a small group construction. And one of the recommended activities that teacher can use is to ask students, and I am using it. Sometimes I ask students to read the writing loud out in front of the class. Other students sit and act as an audience. So here the readers, and here the audience. Here the writers, sorry, and here the audience. Those audience are supposed to offer some suggestions, some feedback to the writers. Finally, remember that text analyzing and joint construction, when the students help each other, should be repeated before going to the next stage. What is the next stage? Is the independent construction of the text. When the students have sufficient background knowledge about the topic, about the social function of using this particular topic, about the text structure, about the language and the grammar, teacher moves on to the independent construction, where you can give them a question like that, very definite question: write a descriptive essay in about 100 to 150 words to describe your house in an interesting way. You might like to include so and so and so. The last stage is the linking related text. What I mean by linking related text? Now, it is to relate what students have learned to other genres. For example, what? Give the students descriptive essay and give them report essay, and ask the students to look at both of them and to conduct a mini analysis of the language features, of the structure, and ask them to reflect on that. Can you see any difference in the structure between report essay and descriptive essay? You can also ask them, can you see any difference in the vocabulary used, in the structure, in the language? You help here a learner to increase the rhetorical awareness. You help your learner to achieve something like, now if you ask me to write any type of a text, I know how to include what type of structure can be done, what type of language can be used. And this stage cannot be ignored, because it's a kind of an outcome. Whether you here find out the students learned and obtained the difference between report and the descriptive essay. Now the last slide is the final tips, and this is the This is the last slide. Remember that writing approaches are essential in every writing lesson. So these writing approaches has gone through a lot of changes over the years in order to enable the second language learners to become good writers. Some of those approaches that we have looked today were the product, process, and genre approach. Number two, adopting an appropriate approach in classroom is important, depending on what? Depending on the goal that's set by the teacher. So teachers should first determine the approach they need to use. She should identify the correct one in her writing classroom. Why that is very important? Because teachers want to reach to effective outcome. Suppose, think that if a teacher chooses a non-ideal approach, that would lead to a difficult experience on the students and cause disappointment to the teachers and even to the students. Why it causes disappointment to the teacher? Because she has done a lot of hard work and put hard work in planning and in teaching, but there is no goals achieved. And even the students, there is no learning achieved. In other words, it will motivate both teachers as well as the students. So adopting an appropriate approach in the classroom is very important, depending on the goal that the teacher wants to achieve. So for instance, or in another way, younger learners with very limited proficiency should be exposed to product-based approach, as they need model, as they need example to begin with the writing genre. So start with them with the product approach, and then when they get more a higher level, that you can start to introduce the process approach and then to the genre approach. So without an approach, the writing classroom will move into multiple directions with no goals achieved. Finally, try to look at different types of approach when you start to write, when you start to teach writing. For example, expose the students to all these various methods. This will give the students an idea about different types of writing, different types of techniques of writing, and then give them this will give them the opportunity to identify and to use and choose the correct approach when they are going to write a piece of writing in the near future. I think that we finished. Thank you so much. I hope you find this workshop available, and I hope to see you in another sessions, and happy weekend.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab, for sharing with us these useful approaches as well as tips to teaching second language writing. It was an amazing and interesting workshop.